This video is about whether science proves anything 100% absolute or not, and this is a clip from Jaron and Nathan Oakley's discussion. It's on the Original Asylum YouTube channel, and he also has a Discord, so check them out. But the way I viewed this is basically Jaron trying to teach Nathan common fucking sense for 2 hours. But it is entertaining. So I'll be covering mainly the two examples that Nathan brought, and that heat causes water to boil and the lack of vitamin C causes scurvy. So, for starters, we can rule out, by their strict definition of natural science, we can rule out heat causes water to boil. That falls under thermodynamics and the laws of thermodynamics, the first one, I do believe. So I'll be more focusing in on the lack of vitamin C causes scurvy.
You might guess it's heat that causes it. But if you put a candle under it wouldn't replicate the experience that you had when you observed the natural phenomena in the first place. So your educated guess is going to have a bearing on what you manipulate. And in this instance, although it's not quantitative versus qualitative that I'm highlighting here, it's just that you'll have a good idea of how much heat in this instance you might want to apply.
Depending on what Nathan's arguing about or whether he needs to shut it down, he'll sometimes say that science is qualitative and not quantitative. Even though I showed several examples, or the first few years of them showing us this, that they had quantities in the hypothesis. But think about it for a minute. How are you going to validate or invalidate a hypothesis without quantities? It's retarded.
It would be nonsensical for me to make this statement without this one attached. I'd be an idiot. They would immediately know that I'm clearly clueless.
Because when you test your hypothesis, your aim is to ascertain the cause. You're trying hard to prove it, not putting a candle underneath or putting an extra thick crock pot.
Would you say this, Nathan, would you say that a person could make a mistake because they're fallible and they didn't know to the level that they needed to go to prove it? So again, if you would you admit that could happen? Or are you going to admit, or are you going to say that?
Yeah.
Okay. So if that happens, Nathan, now we're on the same page now. If that happens, then that person would think they proved the null and it'd be incorrect.
Yeah,
correct.
As I say, that happens all the time. People make errors, and you're right. But embedded in the process, that's why I kept on affirming systematic experimentation. Yeah, somebody could have formulated an invalid hypothesis to be.
It's hilarious listening to Nathan argue against common sense. Who said anything about an invalid hypothesis? Jaron brought up human error. And that alone should be enough to show you that nothing can be 100% proven, if you had any sense. Take, for example, QE, quantum eraser. The science behind his very fucking name implies probability, and how nothing's fucking 100%. Are you kidding me?
Begin with, that's absolutely the case. Yeah, people are fallible.
So when are you going to how are you going to make the decision that somebody didn't make a mistake? How are you going to be the determination? So we have to trust, hold on, I'm talking. So we have to trust Nathan Oakley's opinion of the experiment before we call it proof, because they could have gotten it wrong. But the fact that somebody could get it wrong isn't evidence enough for you to realize that we could never assume that everybody got everything right.
Don't assume anything. You do it yourself. You can validate.
What if I'm wrong as well? What if
But there's an interesting change in the dictionary. Apparently in the older dictionaries, which I have quite a few different dictionaries, the definition of vitamin C is not ascorbic acid. That was actually updated later in the dictionary.
So they literally didn't even properly define vitamin C or isolate it until like the mid-1920s. They went through a couple centuries of empirical testing with hundreds of hypotheses, some more valid than others. And here, this is directly for Nathan. The trick that QE, the deception, is that he's giving you the modern day hypothesis. And not to mention, he's using clinical fucking studies. Like, this is how all this stuff was empirically tested. With clinical studies, bro. Nathan, are you really, like, sticking up for the medical? I mean, I don't even know what to say, bro.
Dictionaries. So if you're reading a recent edition of a dictionary, you're going to find that vitamin C is ascorbic acid. But is it really? Does the type of ascorbic acid sold in vitamins nowadays, is that very similar to the vitamin C that is in nature? Well, what you need to know is this. They make it from glucose, from sugar, and other chemicals. Sometimes they'll use sulfuric acid. And the sugar usually comes from corn. So is it possible that this manufactured chemical can be the same as the vitamin C you would get in nature. In my opinion, it is not the same. It's actually very different. Some real interesting data on vitamin C as far as the research. And the conclusion of a lot of the randomized controlled trials is that there is little to no benefit. There's some mixed results, but there is a lot of misinterpretation. And again, I'm going to put that data down below. You should check it out. The reason why it may help you is put the phagocytes in high gear. It makes them work faster. And the phagocytes are part of the immune system and it tends to clean up everything. But you can do the same thing with apple cider vinegar. Why would you need to take ascorbic acid? So number one, little to no benefit. Number two, most of the vitamin C sold out there is fake, and I'm talking about synthetic, of just one part of the vitamin C complex that come, if we compare this to nature. If we look in nature, vitamin C comes in a complex with different parts. You have the antioxidant part, which is the ascorbic acid. You have bioflavonoids. You have the J factor, which helps with oxygen. You have vitamin K, which is part of that complex, which helps decrease bleeding. And you also have copper in a certain enzyme form because most vitamin complexes come with a mineral. But the point is that in nature, you have many, many other parts of the vitamin C complex, not to mention all the phytonutrients and the plant-based chemicals that we haven't even discovered yet as well. We're constantly discovering new phytonutrients that come with different vitamins and minerals.
Now, this man's speaking of artificial vitamins, but I put that in there to point out all the new discoveries and everything that goes into these. To think, I mean, especially with medical, to think that a hypothesis can't be invalidated further down the road with new discoveries is fucking retarded. For all of recorded history, we've learned more and more about nature and have learned that we have literally misinterpreted nature.
Nobody would have ever gotten scurvy in the first place. The reason vitamin C cures scurvy is because the disease is actually caused by a vitamin C deficiency. Without this vitamin, the body can't properly form collagen. Collagen is a protein that makes up the vast majority of our connective tissues, so without enough of it, things can go seriously wrong. For example,
So this is a perfect example. As soon as they find a compound they can introduce to the body to assist in making collagen, then the lack of vitamin C will not cause scurvy. I mean, I could give a gajillion examples like this. Like, they used to think that being out to sea for too long caused scurvy. For centuries, they thought that. So, or they just stopped there, and yeah, you validated your hypothesis. So it's 100% proven, don't stay out to sea too long or you might get scurvy. Science, to me, is a body of knowledge, and it's constantly updating. We are constantly learning more and invalidating old hypotheses. I mean, depending on how far we go back, some of the old knowledge is just totally insignificant, completely. So I can't teach common sense, but I can certainly point out the lack of it. I'm still baffled he brought up medical science. In almost every clinical trial, there are random results. It's all about the quantitative and the qualitative together. The more data they have, the better the conclusion's going to be. So my conclusion, I'll give Nathan this. If we're arguing within the scientific method, we can validate or invalidate a hypothesis at that time based on that base of knowledge. But that's it. You try and bring that out into the real world like the way you're arguing it. Bro, you've lost your fucking mind, dude. Excuse my language, but this is like needs to be pounded in their heads. They're stepping outside of the scientific method and acting like things are 100% proven. That's ridiculous. Now, I made this video to show you how wrong you are, Nathan, and like, not if you're talking about like science proves cats eat food, like shout out to Kyle Adams, which we know that's not how y'all define science, okay? But science doesn't prove anything outside of the method, period. Okay, and isn't it equally, I mean, if we're arguing with Globers and they try and say science has proven the earth, okay, for one, we still have the argument that that's not science, okay? We can all agree with that measurements and shit like that aren't science. But isn't it equally funny, just for anybody new listening, just to say, hold on, science doesn't prove anything, and they have to concede that? They don't concede much, but they will concede that one, dude. And for anybody new listening, that's way more powerful, in my opinion, than the nonsense. So this is why Jaron and David called you a scammer, dude. Because you've been shown to be wrong, and you're arguing fanatically about it. Now, I just made a video showing you how the guy who you learned science from has been lying to us this whole entire time. Okay? The argument is whether light is a particle or a wave. He won't enter the actual argument, and he says that experiments proven light's a particle. I showed that that was a lie. And I was able to do that from clipping out the couple times he was honest. Not the and showing the multiple times he lied. So take some time to digest this, bro. We used to love your show. Quit listening to Quantum Eraser's horseshit lies and get the debates going again. You're going to get more viewers, more revenue, more internal support. I mean, you have everything to gain. To be honest, I was kind of worried to put out the last video. I thought, man, I don't want to piss everybody off and lose all my viewers. I actually gained viewers. Nathan, look at your view count. It started off with like 1,000 views. It went up to 1,500, averaging 2,000 views right when Quantum Eraser joined. And you got where you were about to average 3,000 views a show, and then it just started going downhill. Downhill, downhill, downhill. Bro, just look at the numbers. They don't lie.